You sell an old car for $15,000 cash. You feel clever about it, so you plan to deposit $5,000 on Monday and the other $10,000 on Tuesday, just to keep things quiet. That single decision, splitting one deposit into two, is the exact move that can turn a routine trip to the bank into a criminal investigation. Here is the number that matters: $10,000. Any cash deposit at or above that amount triggers a mandatory report to FINTRAC, the federal agency that tracks large cash movements across Canada. Most people who have heard of this at all call it the $10,000 cash rule. On its own, that report almost never leads anywhere. But splitting your money to stay under that number has a name. It is called structuring, and structuring is a criminal offense. Under a new federal law that took effect in the spring of 2026, a conviction can carry a fine of up to $2 million plus up to 5 years in prison. Stay with me, because the part that surprises most people is this. The safe move and the dangerous move look almost identical from the outside. Someone who deposits the full amount in a single visit walks away clean. Someone who splits the exact same amount into smaller deposits can end up on a watch list. In this video, I will walk you through exactly how FINTRAC works, why splitting a deposit is far riskier than depositing it all at once, and the one simple way to move a large amount of cash safely, whether you are selling a cottage, a car, or receiving an inheritance. If you are a Canadian retiree who might ever handle a lump sum of cash, this is one banking rule that almost nobody explains properly, and getting it wrong is easier than you think. The $10,000 threshold is not a suggestion. It is a legal requirement. Any single cash transaction of $10,000 or more, in coins or banknotes, has to be reported to FINTRAC, the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada. Break that same amount into smaller deposits to dodge the report, and you have committed a criminal offense called structuring. On indictment, a conviction can carry a fine of up to $2 million and up to 5 years in prison. That is not a typo, and it is not aimed at organized crime rings moving suitcases of cash. It applies to an ordinary retiree standing at a bank counter. To put that fine in perspective, $2 million is more than most of us will ever see across a full working life. More than the total of every mortgage payment, hydro bill, and property tax bill most retirees will pay before they are done paying them. I have watched people talk themselves into this exact mistake without realizing what they were doing. It rarely comes from bad intent. It comes from instinct. Take Dave. He is 62, recently retired, living just outside Toronto. His father passed away last year and left him a 1965 Ford Mustang that had been sitting in the garage for decades. Dave finds a buyer and agrees on a price of $15,000 paid in cash. He has heard something about a $10,000 rule, so his first thought is to keep it simple. Deposit $5,000 one day, $10,000 the next. Here is the mechanism most people never see. FINTRAC does not just watch single transactions. Under what is known as the 24-hour rule, 2 or more cash amounts from the same person that add up to $10,000 or more within a 24-hour window get treated as one single transaction and reported as such. The bank system links Dave's 2 deposits automatically, flags the pattern, and files a report anyway, except now that report carries a structuring flag attached to it. That report becomes available to CRA and to law enforcement. If Dave's tax return shows no matching income for that year, CRA has grounds to open a review. The law does not ask whether Dave meant any harm. It only reads the pattern. That is the part that catches good, honest people off guard. Once a structuring flag is filed, the burden shifts. You are the one who has to prove where the money came from and why you split it the way you did. There is a longer cost hiding underneath this too. Even if Dave never gets caught, living with a structuring flag on file means every future large deposit gets a second look. Banks tend to remember. What feels like a one-time shortcut can quietly follow an account for years. This matters more for retirees than for almost anyone else. A working life of savings tends to turn into cash in bursts, selling a cottage, cashing out an old life insurance policy, receiving an inheritance from a parent. Each of those moments looks completely ordinary on its own. The trouble starts the instant someone tries to make a normal moment look smaller than it actually is. So Dave thinks he is being careful by keeping each deposit under the radar. In reality, the system he is trying to avoid is built specifically to catch that exact behavior. And most Canadians never learn this until a letter from CRA lands in their mailbox. If you are a Canadian retiree who might ever receive a cash inheritance or sell something big for cash, subscribe now. I will show you the simple paperwork that keeps a windfall like this from turning into a $2 million problem. Here is the part that flips most people's instincts upside down. Depositing the full $15,000 in a single transaction is actually the safer move. A single large cash deposit triggers a routine report to FINTRAC, and a routine report on its own is just a data point sitting in a database. The moment you split that same amount to avoid the report, you create a structuring pattern, and a structuring pattern is what actually gets investigated. Picture the two paths side by side. Path A, Dave deposits $15,000 in a single transaction. FINTRAC gets a large cash transaction report. The bank processes it like any other deposit. CRA sees a single event tied to a documented sale, and if Dave can show a bill of sale, there is nothing left to chase. Path B, Dave deposits $5,000 and then $10,000 within a day of each other. The same $15,000 moves through the system, but now it arrives wrapped in a structuring flag. CRA does not see a car sale anymore. It sees a pattern that looks like someone trying to hide something, even when nobody was. I used to think splitting a large deposit was just common sense, the financial version of not carrying too much cash in one pocket. It felt cautious. After actually reading through how FINTRAC and CRA use these reports, I realized the opposite is true. The cautious move is the one that leaves a clean, boring paper trail. The clever move is the one that looks suspicious on paper, even when the money is completely legitimate. That gives us a simple framework, and I will call it the one and done rule. For any cash amount over $10,000, make a single deposit, keep a written record of where the money came from, and never split the amount to dodge a report. Not because splitting is complicated, because splitting is the only version of this that actually breaks the law. There is a longer cost to ignoring this too. A structuring flag does not just create one bad afternoon. It can shape how a bank treats every future deposit, and it can sit in a file that CRA can pull up years later if anything else about a return looks unusual. So Dave's car sale looks like a disaster waiting to happen on paper. But step back for a second and ask why someone like Dave, a careful, responsible person, would instinctively want to split the money in the first place. It is not because he is trying to get away with something. It comes from a bias that affects nearly everyone who has ever handled a large amount of cash. There is a name for what is going on in Dave's head. Call it the under-the-radar bias, the instinct that if you stay small and quiet, nobody notices you. It is the same impulse that makes people hide cash in a drawer instead of a bank account. Your brain treats smaller as safer, but inside a system built to catch financial crime, smaller and repeated is far more dangerous than one large, obvious deposit. If you have ever thought about splitting a cash deposit, you are not unusual. Almost every retiree I have talked to about this has either done it or seriously considered it. It rarely comes from an urge to hide income from the government. It comes from a much more ordinary urge, not wanting to draw attention to yourself. That reaction is completely normal, and it says nothing bad about you. Think about the last time you paid cash for something a little unusual. A used appliance off a classified ad, a favor for a neighbor. Did some part of you want to keep the amount small just so it would not stand out? That is the same wiring at work here, just with much higher stakes attached to it. Here is a reframe that tends to stick. Think of FINTRAC less like a detective hunting for wrongdoing, and more like a spam filter sorting mail. A single $15,000 deposit looks like a normal email from a known sender. It gets filed and forgotten. Two deposits that add up to the same amount, arriving close together, look like a pattern the filter was built to catch. It gets pulled out and read closely. One deposit is routine. A split deposit is a red flag, even when nothing dishonest is happening. I have been on the other side of this myself. A few years back, I sold a motorcycle for $12,000 cash, and my first instinct was exactly what you would expect. Deposit $6,000 now. Deposit the rest next week. Keep it quiet. I mentioned it to an accountant almost as a passing comment, and she stopped me cold. That one conversation is the only reason I did not walk straight into the same trap I am warning you about now. So we know why Dave, and honestly most of us, feel pulled towards splitting a deposit. The instinct is not the problem. Acting on it is. The good news is that avoiding the trap does not take much effort at all, just a different set of steps than the ones your gut suggests. So what should Dave actually do? Let's walk through it. The first step is simple. Deposit the full amount in a single transaction. Walk into the bank. Tell the teller you have a cash deposit of $15,000 from a private car sale and let them process it. They will file a large cash transaction report automatically. That is completely normal, and it is not something to be nervous about. Do not ask them to break it up, and do not offer to come back later with the rest. The second step is to document where the money came from, right away, not months later. A simple bill of sale works fine. Write the date, the amount, a description of what was sold, and get a signature from the buyer if you can. Keep a copy somewhere safe. If CRA ever asks a question, this is the piece of paper that ends the conversation. The third step is the one that matters most. Never structure a deposit under any circumstance. If you feel the urge to keep an amount under $10,000 by spreading it across a few visits, that is the exact moment to stop and do the opposite. Make a single deposit. Keep the paperwork. The risk of structuring is never worth whatever privacy you think it buys you. The fourth step applies if the cash is coming from family rather than a sale. If your children or grandchildren give you a cash gift regularly, ask them for a short signed note confirming it is a gift, along with the date and amount. Without that note, a pattern of unexplained deposits can look like undeclared income, even when it is simply generosity. The fifth step is worth the hour it takes. Before you deposit any large inheritance or the proceeds from a major sale, sit down with a Canadian tax professional, even just once. An hour of their time costs far less than the stress, or the potential penalty, of getting this wrong on your own. None of these 5 steps require special software, a lawyer on retainer, or a complicated process. A folder with a bill of sale, a signed note from a family member, and a bank receipt is usually enough. The goal is not to make yourself invisible. The goal is to make yourself boring, the kind of deposit nobody has a reason to look at twice. Go back to Dave for a moment. He follows the first step and deposits the full $15,000 in a single visit. About 3 months later, he gets a letter from CRA, a routine request asking where the money came from. He sends in his bill of sale. That is the entire exchange. No penalty, no audit, no sleepless nights. Now, picture the version of this story where he split the deposit instead. And that same letter arrives with a very different tone attached to it. If these steps make you feel more confident about handling a large cash amount, hit subscribe. I put out a new video every week to help Canadian retirees protect their money and stay clear of CR, a trouble they never saw coming. Let's bring this back to one idea, the one and done rule. Deposit the full amount in a single transaction, document where it came from, and never split a deposit just to stay under $10,000. That one decision is the difference between a quiet, forgettable bank visit and a fine that can reach $2 million alongside a criminal record you would carry for the rest of your life. None of that is worth the small comfort of thinking you kept a deposit under the radar. If you are a Canadian retiree who wants to handle money like this with confidence instead of guesswork, subscribe to Brian's Canadian Retirement Playbook. I cover the rules that actually affect people our age, the ones that rarely get explained in plain language anywhere else. Leave a comment and tell me this. Have you ever received a large cash payment, and what did you do with it? I read every reply. Thanks for watching. Stay careful, stay informed, and now you know one rule the CRA rarely explains clearly.